So how economically viable are these fuels and what's their life cycle analysis? Our next panel will debate those questions under the expert guidance of its moderator, the Technology and Regulation Manager of the FuelChoices Initiative, Dr. Anat Bonstein.
If you have stayed for the last panel of this summit, then you're either a very bored person or actually interested in biofuels. So I hope it's the latter. Before we begin our discussion, I want to point a few things about biofuels. Biofuels is not just, or advanced biofuels, is not just corn or sugarcane anymore. It's not, there's no debate of land versus fuel or indirect land use change. Biofuels is not just ethanol or biodiesel as we know it. Biofuels could also be hydrocarbons, drop-in fuels, hydrocarbons, that are actually made from renewable sources. Second, the myth that biofuels are not succeeding or fading away is not true. As we speak, there are biofuel refineries working, operating, and we have one of our panelists that will tell you about the companies that he's representing. Third and last, it is not true that biofuels are not economically viable. Well, maybe at $40 a barrel, but hopefully that would change. And those of you that know Abengoa, Kansas site, they're economically viable. So why do we keep on hearing that biofuels are fading away? Well, some companies are not succeeding. But isn't it the same in every industry? Some companies succeed, some companies don't. What does it depend on? Technology and economics. And those two have to go together. And academy and industry must go hand in hand in order to reach economical scale. This is why the US DOE has invested so much money in launching the bioenergy research centers. And this is why Canada has launched the Biofuel Net that we'll be hearing about in a second. All of this will be discussed in the panel that we're now about to start. I want to welcome my distinguished guests. 3 of them are actually from Canada, and the reason they're here is because this was a good chance to escape the Canadian winter and enjoy the Israeli sun. So I want to welcome, first of all, Donald Smith, Director and CEO of Biofuel Net Canada. Dr. Michael Lindenbaum, Vice President of Technology from Agrizoma. And Dr. Jean-Michel Lavoie, presenting Enerchem. And in addition, we have Ms. Tzvia Bar-On, an energy specialist and also a consultant to the National Energy R&D Council in the Mugub. Please. So before we begin with the questions, I want each of you to describe in just a few sentences or slides, if you have prepared, what your company is about. So we'll start with you, Donald.
Okay, I don't actually have a company. I'm a university professor. I am a CEO, but darn, it's a not-for-profit organization. I made a mistake there. But in any case, so I'm a professor at the Plant Science Department of McGill University in Montreal, and I run Biofuel Net Canada. Biofuel Net was established to try to coordinate biofuels research within Canada. It's really organized to try to bring together academia and government and to try to organize things so that we can move as quickly as possible towards renewable fuels, or greater reliance on renewable fuels. And we'd like to see something like 25 to 50% use of renewable fuels in Canada. If we can manage it, that would be extremely nice. And you just have to tell me when to stop, all right? So,
go ahead.
Yeah, but we are looking to increase reliance on renewable fuels, moving off fossil fuels. There are arguments about fossil fuels related to climate change, and also, I don't know, it just seems like it's not the best idea to build your culture long-term around something that's a non-renewable resource. This is potentially a problem in the long run. We represent about 100 researchers across Canada. We are at 27 different universities in Canada. We get $5 million a year from the federal government, about another $4 million from partners. We have 90 industrial partners and another 40 or so from other sectors. We bring together the academics, industry, and government to quite a meaningful extent, and we try to coordinate all their needs and their activities as much as we can. Okay?
That's yeah. I think. No, I'm just think now that you're saying that. You're trying to coordinate so many people. So we had the FuelChoices initiative. Can't complain about actually just coordinating 9 ministries. But
ministries are different from people, though.
Yeah, that is true. Michael, we'll move on to you.
Thank you.
Do you have slides?
I represent a company called Agrisoma, but first I should step back and thank the organizers for inviting us to this fantastic meeting. I'm learning a lot attending all of these sessions. It's really wonderful being here. Also escaping the cold. Our company, it's a small Canadian company, but we're growing. We're developing a crop called Brassica carinata. Brassica carinata is a feedstock crop, or it's a crop that is used to produce a feedstock that can be used for renewable biofuels manufacturing. So now you know everything there is to know about carinata, but we're afraid to ask.
Svea?
Hi. First of all, thank you for inviting me here today. I'm the person who talks. Unlike all the doers here, I tell you what is right and wrong and what you should do. I'm a consultant. I manage here PetroQuantum Israel, which is a Dutch-based energy consulting firm. And I also act as the advisor of the Israeli National Israeli R&D Energy Committee. And we're going to talk today, obviously.
Yes, I know you have a lot to say. Jean-Michel, please.
Yeah, my name is Jean-Michel Lavoie. I'm from the University of Sherbrooke. Don spoke about McGill, which is in Montreal. Sherbrooke, for those of you who don't know where Sherbrooke is, which probably most of you don't know where Sherbrooke is, between Montreal and Quebec, close to the US border. So it's a small city. And I lead a team of 45 students, and we have many industrial partners, including Enerchem. And Enerchem is the reason why I'm here today, because Enerchem's technology is really interesting for many countries around the world, including in Israel, where wastes are something that concerns the population of Israel. But the Enerchem way to do it is to convert this into fuel. So I have a couple of slides just presenting what's going on with Enerchem. First one. Yes. So basically the concept behind Enerchem is to convert municipal solid waste into ethanol, and going from municipal solid waste to ethanol leads them through methanol production. So it's pretty interesting to see that you can use the waste and the carbon content into the waste in order to produce some added value products. So for those of you who know a little bit about chemistry, methanol is a close brother to dimethyl ether, and it's a building block afterwards. So once you produce methanol, you can go to ethanol, or an isomer of ethanol called dimethyl ether, of course. So if you can move forward with the slides. So the concept is, and Enerchem's way of doing things, they are operating with a commercial unit that can use up to 100,000 dry metric tons of non-recyclable waste that they're getting from municipal solid waste, of course. So with this biomass, they can either convert into biofuels, and we're talking about 38 million liter with this amount of biomass or feed into the gasifiers. And of course you can produce ethanol, but you can produce as well chemicals that could be used for other purposes. So we were talking previously about added value products. Well, if you have methanol, well, you have many options to go to other added value products. And syngas is a building block that can allow you as well to go to other added value products. Next slide, please. So we're talking about landfill. The first commercial unit of Enerchem is located in Edmonton in Canada. So Enerchem was founded in Sherbrooke. They have offices in Montreal. They have demo plant in Westbury, which is another weird small city close to Sherbrooke that you probably don't know about. But the full facility is in Edmonton, and what they have been able to achieve is by adding the biofuel conversion of the carbon-based substrate to the Edmonton facility, they were able to divert 90% of the waste. So by diverting this, while there's composting, recycling, but of course, part of the carbon can be used chemically to produce methanol, ethanol, and other added value products. Slide, please. So the first ever facility of Enerchem was inaugurated last June of 2014. And of course, we're talking about 38 million liter per year. And the feedstock is municipal solid waste from the city of Edmonton. And the contract is a 25-year contract providing 100,000 ton per year. And the products so far are methanol and what we call cellulosic ethanol or second generation ethanol. And I think that's it.
Thank you. It's very interesting to take something that is actually bad and not needed and turn it into something so valuable, so to fuels and byproducts. So very interesting. My first question is actually to both Michael and to you, Jean-Michel. Where do you think the biggest challenge is for implementation of new technologies, and what do you think the government's role should be in it? So,
Well, I'm afraid I won't be very original, but I think I have to echo the sentiments of two speakers from the previous round table or discussion group. The gentleman from Tata Motors, as well as Professor Herskovich. I think the gentleman from Tata brought up this issue of carbon valuation and being extremely important, and just having an understanding of how we accrue value from carbon, and how we appreciate what the contribution of carbon is in this whole process. Because if there's no value accorded to carbon, it makes it very difficult for a company like Agrizoma to function in this environment, especially with the pressure from lower prices of our petroleum competitors. So that's a major issue for Agrizoma in any case, is how we value carbon.
So for technology as Enerchem and any new technology as they are developing, I think one of the biggest challenges is going from pilot to full industrial scale. And this requires a lot of money, and usually banks don't invest at this point of R&D. So you're going from a pilot, and in Canada we're able to get there and get funding to this level. But then you have this gap between full commercial facility, which is hard. So at this point you need to get a lot of money, and usually this money comes from equity. It's easier in that sense. So there's a lot of money required to jump above this problem.
yes, and in long-term projects like that, investors are not really jumping to put in the money. So.
Yeah, if you think, you were talking about government initiative as well. Well, if you think about government, of course, government could invest on putting policy together in order for the fuel to be promoted. So if you have but if you have way to promote different types of fuel, and if you make sure that those fuel can be added to the actual fuel pool, you're going to be able to attract other investors eventually, because the government will state that it's safe to use this fuel, and we agree on using this fuel, so definitely new investor will come. And now I'm putting my hat of a university professor, and one of the things that also government has to do, once the technology has been launched, of course it's pretty important to maintain people from academia close behind, because we're training new personnel, and this personnel is crucial for companies. So as an example, in our case, we're working closely with Enerchem, and all the students that we're training master or PhD level are hired by the company, because those people have this knowledge, this specific knowledge that they have developed specifically for their technology.
I'd like to follow on that point because I agree with
Go ahead.
with the comments that were made on that. As a company, we have a lot of collaborations with academic labs across Canada and also in the United States. We're a seed company, and we have to evaluate new varieties in the regions that those seeds are going to be grown. And we don't, as a small company, don't necessarily have the land base of our own to actually do that, and certainly not amongst all those varied geographies. And so we do work very closely with state universities. We work very closely with extension groups in the United States who carry out trials for us, agronomic trials, variety trials, and we learn what the best varieties are for that particular geography. And we also help them train people who can potentially be agrosomas employees of tomorrow. It's not strictly a government role, but it's a very important role that academia plays for us.
And that takes me to, you want to say something else?
Yeah, just one last comment as well. If you're looking into things that government could do, once the technology is going forward, maybe some programs helping on the capital to lower the risk for all the investors could be useful if the government becomes one of the partners
That's
in
a
the
huge
system.
role of government, just to help small companies cross the so-called valley of death.
Lowering
Absolutely.
the risk and also incentivizing the fuels according to their externalities. And yeah. So your remarks about the academy actually takes me to my next question, which is for Don and for Tzvia. As of the academy role, how do you see it within BiofuelNet? There's a lot of academia-industry relationship there, as you mentioned before. And Tzvia, after I want to hear from you how you see it as a consultant to the Ministry of Science and Technology and to the MOMOP. So Don, we'll start with you.
Sure. In the context of BiofuelNet, we have 10 large projects, but each of those is composed of work packages. And those are work packages usually represents a lab or two labs and one or two professors. And we have a total of 70 work packages. And every work package has at least one receptor in it. When a receptor is usually, I guess it should be clear, it's a receptor for the technology that's developed. And so that's usually a commercial entity of some sort. So we have 90 industrial partners, as I said before, and but although in some cases, for instance, we also do work on aspects of environment, we do aspects of policy. The policy guys will have, for instance, government receptors. So it depends, but the receptors are there, and they work closely usually with the academics to determine the nature of the research. There's always a lot of tiptoeing around intellectual property as a result, but they're there and they influence the research. And they have a voice in it from the outset, and also if the technology is successfully developed, they have a very strong interest in taking it up and deploying it.
So actually the industry is telling you or signaling you their needs, what they need, and you're...
They're signaling their needs, and there's always a dynamic discussion, I think, between the industry and the academics. I mean, the industry's time frame, event horizon, whatever, is necessarily relatively short. The academics always take a longer-term view, or generally take a longer-term view, and the interaction between those two can actually be quite interesting at times and can lead to some really creative thinking. Having said that, of course, the industry always has to live with that short-term event horizon on their part. But
Okay. Tzvia?
Okay, well, my case study is Israel, obviously, so perhaps my conclusions would be a little different. But my question is there a role for the academia? And I'll explain what I mean. Could you please put on the one slide, first slide? Yes, this one. Thank you. This is a research we've done for the 5-6 years between 2008 2014. It has been done in 2014, and it has looked into the inputs and the outputs of Israeli innovation in various sectors of the energy industry. The blue column represents all of the academia research that has been done in the specific energy sector. The red column represents what we call here the ITTN projects, which are the tech transfer projects. That means the number of projects that have been moved from pure research into the tech transfer companies. And the green column, if you could notice, it is the actual tech transfer deals. As you can see, not much has been done in the academia. And this is real data from Israel alone. But from what I understand and talking to tech transfer, no, I don't need the others. Here's the first one. Thank you. We've been talking to all tech transfer companies in the Israeli universities. They have very good success rates compared with the US and the UK. So, can we rely on the academia to tell us what the next technologies are? Well, if not, and if academia needs to investigate and research just things, you know, for human knowledge, can we rely on industry? I'm trying here to get into an answer, but well, I'm taking it here from what Moti has said in the previous discussion about the price of oil. The price of oil is going down, and if you have read the IEA forecast from 2 days ago, they're saying that the price of oil is not going to exceed $60 per barrel during 2016, and is not going to exceed $80 per barrel until 2020.
Yeah, towards
So we cannot really rely on private industry, because we all know that when the price of oil is going down, it's extremely difficult for new technologies to evolve. So we need to look into the government. And we believe here that government should well, and it has been said here, incentivize not only merit, yes, it has to look into merit and excellence, but also it has to prioritize. It has to look into trends and help academia choose those trends and start research them. So this is this is what I believe is extremely important here. Thank you.
anyone?
Yeah, sure. I think just thinking about the academic end of things, the academia fulfills a number of functions overall. So, you know, there's always this business about, they'll talk about what's coming down the pipeline in terms of, and what in the pipeline can reach the point where it can be applied. But it's one of those worries of mine occasionally. I do a lot of basic and a lot of applied research and some basic research. And my fear is that if we abandon the basic research, eventually the pipeline will be empty. So we need to have things coming down the pipeline, of course, yeah. So we need to bear that in mind. I think having said that, though, the interaction between companies and industry has the potential to bring the right sorts of things to the forefront for a given sector, and that can help a lot. But building those relationships between industry and academia, that needs to continue. In Canada, for instance, for I think since really the middle 1990s, we've had an expanding program of partnerships. So this is where our research funding agencies promote partnership between industry and academia by offering, they'll lever industry dollars through research, and the industry I think can usually get something like 4-to-1 leverage, something around that, between the initial incentives and then subsequent tax credits. And this can lead to a greater and more intimate relationship. But what I've seen is over the 20 years that those have been in place is that there's a gradual and continued enthusiasm for those in industry. It's still increasing, and there's still considerable potential for increase. So it takes a while for everybody to get onto the potential of those things.
Firstly, could I just add one comment?
Yeah, please.
I totally agree with you. I was just looking and talking about, well, the cyclical nature of the oil industry. And in times like this, when the oil price is going down, and in Israel, we're looking into investments into energy innovation, we need to understand that there's a role for each and every part, of this value chain. And so obviously the industry is extremely important, but in Israel, if the industry doesn't exist, you would need some help from the right government agencies.
Yeah, correct. And I think I indicated before, BiofuelNet, we have a policy component. So we advise government on potential policies and ramifications of potential policies. And effective policy is critical.
Yes. So we heard about Enerchem that evolved from Sherbrooke University, and still you are, of course, in collaboration. But Don, is there any other example within BiofuelNet? Again, you said that the importance of such a collaboration, but any other industry, academic collaboration that is currently going on right now in BiofuelNet?
Well, I would say that we have a wide range of them, really. It's 90 industrial partners. So in the case of Enerchem, it's related to conversion technologies. Jeff Birch-Thorson is with us out in the audience. He's a utilization person, so and they have collaborations with Ford. They have collaborations with Rolls-Royce, and what I think Rolls-Royce now Siemens, but they have collaboration with the aviation sector, the service transport sector.
So the automotive sector and the aviation sector are also part of this network.
That's right. And myself, I work in crop production, so I have collaborations with people who are involved with producing agricultural inputs. So we cover the full spectrum, I think.
Yeah, okay. And now, Bracha ended before with a question of what will be in 10 years. I don't know, 10 years is a short time. I hope they will finish building the Israeli train here in Tel Aviv in 10 years. But looking more into the future, especially with electric mobility in the future, we heard in the last few days that will be a very, very big part of the automotive industry. How do you see biofuels fit in? And that any one of you could answer that. How do you see biofuels? What section, what sector, how much, what percentage? Please say.
All right, I'll hit me if I talk too much.
You get all the hard questions.
My wife hits me when I talk too much. It works. It's very effective. But exactly. But I think there are certain sectors. Surface transport, you can move to other things. Electric. These are possible. But certainly the aviation sector is a bit strapped. There's some small potential for electric aircraft, but it's very limited and it's quite a distance in the future. So, but by and large, I think they really need liquid fuels, and they have to be high density liquid fuels. So it has to be, it's going to have to be at some point. I think, given fuel prices are down now, oil prices, but I promise you they won't stay down. And it's a question of how long until they come up again. And I think at the same time, the arguments around climate change are only going to get louder as time goes by. So I think there is going to be a very definite need for biofuels, and the aviation sector is, I would argue, in my discussion with them, both aware and afraid. I mean, they know what's coming, and they're very nervous about it. When we had the peak price in 2008, Air Canada, our national carrier, was telling me at that time that 40% of their operating costs were fuel, and it's not something they're comfortable with. I don't know if I answered all of the question.
The airline industry has been very forward-looking in this. They set goals for carbon reduction to be achieved by 2020. They want to be able to have all growth in the airline industry be carbon neutral with respect to 2005 levels, and by 2050 they want a 50% reduction. So there is going to be a lot of pull just because of those mandates that have been set by the airline industry. So I agree with Don on that as well.
Yeah, I also agree that the aviation sector is a very promising sector for biofuels, and Tzvia, you had a slide that you wanted to.
No, but I would like to say a few things about predictions. Well, I'm not as clever as you are, so I'm just. I'm not. I was looking at the description of the panel, and everybody had a doctor in front of their names, and I had nothing. My God. I'm just kidding here. So I'm not into predictions, but we haven't talked. Well, I haven't talked about the Valley of Death, and I call it also the Valley of Disbelief. And in biofuels, this is so common. to see many companies, many young companies, many technology companies start with high hopes, with extremely promising technology, and they just die between the demonstration stage and the pilot and commercialization stage. And I'm not into prediction, but if we're not going to solve it, and well, this climate of low oil prices, I'm not sure how to solve it. That would be a big problem, because the biofuels of today, and well, and those biofuels are the biofuels that most of the world governments have mandates to. If they're not sufficient enough, as Bracha was saying, technology should be viable and they have to be economic. So we need new technologies, and we have to bridge this valley of disbelief.
Yeah, valley of death, or in biofuels, I think it's an even deeper one. Yeah. So maybe some of you in the audience won't agree with me, but at least I feel that way, that the government, as a representative of the government of Israel, we are very trying to form the policy and the ecosystem to promote alternative fuels and biofuels.